Hi, I'm your host, Mary Jordan. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Springdale Today. Today we're chatting with art educators and working artists Whitney Bell of Springdale High School and Milan Jilka of Har-Ber High School. We're going to spend some time getting to know the artist educators, learn more about their work, and discover what draws them to teaching the next generation of artists within Springdale Schools. Thank you for both being here with us today.
Thanks for having us.
I'm really excited to talk to you guys. You know, a lot of times we don't think of our teachers as having an identity outside of the classroom, right?
Totally.
You went to school to be an art teacher, and that's it. Right? That's how, if you saw your teacher in the grocery store, it was really kind of like citing Bigfoot, right?
Right.
So I'm really excited to have a conversation with you guys where we could talk a little bit about your work and your art and just the incredible things you are doing and introducing our students to.
Great.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. So I'm curious, what inspires your guys' artwork and how does that kind of influence how you teach?
Go ahead.
All right.
Yeah. Sure.
So I am an abstract painter. We're similar but different in the way we paint, and we've actually shown work a lot together.
We have. Yeah.
And sometimes we will like show up to an exhibition and be like, "You're in this? Oh my gosh!" It's often unplanned. We've applied for the same, shows. But I respond to organic shapes that I see just in daily life, but I'm not looking at anything when I'm painting, so I work in a lot of layers. The first layer is sort of botanical or anatomical, but lots of organic shapes, and then I'm responding to that layer. Sometimes I'm outlining, sometimes adding more, but my process is very intuitive, and just art making in general kind of goes to my whole philosophy of art and teaching art, just doing what comes natural to you, not overthinking it. And it's been developed maybe over the last 15 years is where I've been painting in the same way for about 15 years, and it's evolved, but I've been painting in layers of organic shape and pattern for about 15 years.
Very like bright, vivid colors, or
both. So I sometimes will do a layer of neutrals and then a layer of brights and then a layer of neutrals, and I kind of go back and forth until it feels done. I never really like my work until I've painted over it like maybe 10 times. And I usually won't show my beginning layers until I can show them all together, because I like where it goes and I want people to see that, but I don't really, the first layers are just the first layers. And that's important to teach my painting students too.
Milan, what about you? Can you share about your work?
Well, I've been painting for, years and years now. I think my work has changed quite a bit, but I think the last 6-ish years, I've really kind of delved into pattern making, like exploring pattern making, and then the natural world kind of together. So thinking about things like plants and flowers and the geometry of those things and how they kind of enmesh or can be enmeshed, and kind of thought of in kind of creative and colorful ways. And so I've really dove in deep into this kind of enmeshment, and made it so that it keeps everything interesting for me, and I keep on creating and I keep on exploring. And I think as far as like translating into the classroom, for me, much of the work that I do involves process and really kind of thinking in the moment and thinking through things. I know Whitney works intuitively quite a bit. My intuitive is not so much movement as it is kind of thinking about things and what can come next, and then actually applying those things. And I think for my students, I really try to push the idea of process and not being done ever, really, but working towards something. And I think for me, that's the most important thing for them, is to really push that idea, because it's a tough thing to make art, is to sit and make art, let alone for an 88-minute period. But, if I'm the painting that I'm working on right now at home, I've been working on for like 6 months, So it's a commitment, I think, and kind of leading by that example and showing my painting students or my AP students, what it kind of involves to create things from nothing into something is kind of fun. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, and what I love about your work is it's so intricate and precise.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's so, I can appreciate why it's taking you 6 months to work on a piece. And I hope everybody has a chance to appreciate both of their work when we're done chatting with them today. So part of what we were talking about while we were getting to know each other a little bit more before was a little bit about your education. And Milan, I didn't realize that you actually have a PhD.
Yeah.
And you just shared some news that you're starting a graduate program.
Yes.
Yeah. So why choose to work within public schools, right? Why choose to work there as a working artist as well as an educator?
I think I will be in public schools forever. I'm super passionate about public schools. I grew up in private schools, and I think that's one reason. I have, I actually went to a public high school halfway through my freshman year, but it was in a very different area than where I'm teaching now at Springdale High School. It was in the middle of Dallas, and very homogenous, affluent area. And I didn't, when I got out of that bubble and started teaching in public schools in 2010 in Fayetteville first, and, met different types of people and just saw the beauty of public schools teaching everyone. It's where everyone can be. And it's really important to me to teach them all. I know that's like a big Springdale phrase that I really, resonates with me. But I think that everyone also is an artist internally. Everyone has a creative practice. And if everyone was making art, doing something creative every day, what a beautiful thing that would be. It would be, we would all be better off. I think we'd be happier. We would have that outlet for the pain, and it's just a different way of thinking. It's different than any other class. I always tell my students, art doesn't exist without you. Mm-hmm. Geometry is there whether you're there or not. It's good to know. But the art that you make is what makes this class. And so every year it's different. It's the content is what they're making. And we're engaging with the canon of art history often. We have to do that. But they're bringing in new work every year. And then I show that work to the next year. And it's like, now 10 years of Springdale High School students' paintings that we're able to reference. So I don't know if I answered your question, but
you did, and it was very beautiful sentiment. But Milan, what about you? Why do you choose to teach within public schools?
Just to kind of piggyback off of what Whitney was saying, I just like the fact that I've been at Har-Ber now. This is my 10th year, and you have repeat courses. Like I teach painting, and I've taught AP for like the last 7 years. But there's never really a repeat of work, So everything is always, from the student's point of view, it's always something new that they're creating. And it's great as a viewer of art as much as a maker of art. It's so great to be able to see student artwork because they have less experience, right? They're younger, maybe a little bit more emotional, I'm kind of set in my ways as a middle-aged man, But it's great to kind of see them creating, and it's great to see them creating something new all the time. It's inspiring, right? And especially if they commit to that act of creation, which I think is wonderful. So,
do you guys bring your students into your creative process at all?
Sometimes. So we both paint while we're teaching when we can. Like I think you have an easel. I have an easel in my room. Mm-hmm. Starting out in the year, I don't get to do it much. We're still going through our systems. But once students are working on something, and if they don't need me, I might go paint for 5 minutes and then come back and help a student. But just creating that like studio feeling, we're all making art. I'm working on my art, you're working on your art. And I've had a few students, because I paint very intuitively, and they can see what I'm doing with these organic shapes. And I had 2 students last year who were like, "Hey, Miss, can I add some?" And I was like, "Yeah, just keep it organic." I want it to fit, but yes. And I actually have a hearing impaired student who did a whole layer on one of my paintings last year. Miji, I have him again this year in painting 2. And a kid named Paul. Paul did not get along with a lot of his teachers, but he loved me and he loved my class. He, he needed to move. And so he was often walking around, and he also wanted to add some layers. And, I love that. I let my kids work on my paintings at home. They'll often help me start an underpainting. And so students, it's the same. I love for them to be in my process, and I'm often in their process. I try not to work on their paintings, but I'll, kind of verbally show them, or sometimes I have to physically show them, a little thing to do. But yes, they're definitely involved in my process.
Yeah. And with me, I like to, besides, like Whitney painting a little bit at school when we have the time, because we want them to see us actually kind of, thinking through things, right, in a visual way. I try to do projects with them once in a while, and then sometimes, it's more about, I have to figure out if it's a new project or a new-ish project or a new technique or something. It's about going through those things and actually creating a piece or starting to create a piece based on, all that kind of process that's involved, So, and I just, as an art maker, I love that kind of stuff. It's great to kind of problem solve that way and to teach that way and to show that this is what it takes or this is what you have to watch out for. Yeah.
Yeah, it keeps up with like having the empathy of what it is, like, they're struggling maybe with a step in their painting, and I am too. And just, it reminds me, I can't imagine not making art while, my students are making art, because we're all going through this vulnerability and having to figure out what's the next step. I think if as art teachers, if we're not doing that, we may forget how hard it can be and how artists block, you get stuck. How do we push through that?
Well, and that's a really great question. How does experimentation and failure factor in? I'm sure not every piece you started turned out how you anticipated it going.
Totally. I actually tell my students, if you think you know what your painting's going to look like at the end, that's going to be very hard, because it won't look like that.
It's probably the most difficult thing to intuit, like what the thing is going to end up being like. Totally. Exactly. Right. So.
And so many people won't even make art because they say, oh, well, I can never get what's on my head on paper. Me either. That's not what art is. It has its own life. You have an idea, but it's going to evolve, and it's probably not, you might not even use the same colors that you started out thinking that you would, because maybe they're not working. You have to be intuitive and flexible. So
I agree. Yeah. The flexibility is super important. I think that's what you learn after making art for a long time, is learning how to be flexible, learning that you're going to make mistakes, and that's part of the process. I like to, just in my personal practice, have multiple works going on at once. And so if I am kind of hung up on one or tired of one or sick of one, I'll just leave it and go on to the other one. And, I'll come back to the other one when I get a chance. But I've had works that just kind of sit for a couple of years, just that I have to redo. I know I have to redo or want to redo. But I get to them and it works out even better, So it's whatever happened in that 2 years, makes me more excited about completing that piece. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so how do you guys define success to your students?
Doing the thing, just, making art. I always say, like, there's really no wrong answer. There's always room for improvement, but in my class, the wrong answer is doing nothing. If you are actively, working to figure out the art you want to make, maybe I'll have a suggestion and we can reference the real elements and principles of art for some help. But so much of art is, it's not objective. So a successful piece may look different for one artist versus another if they're going for an abstraction or realism, and also them feeling good about their art. If they feel good about their art and they're proud of it, that's really important. It doesn't matter what other people think. It's your own language.
That's very cool. And, I'm always blown away when I go to your art shows and to see what the students are making and how talented they are. I probably shouldn't be surprised because remarkable adults were likely remarkable children, right? But at the same time, they just blow me away. So when you're talking about building that confidence in them, how do you do that to allow them to explore their creativity boldly and to have confidence what they're creating, even if it's not exactly what they had in their head when they started?
I think it comes through projects. I mean, thinking through projects and how, what tools they're using, what methods they're using, and then really kind of having conversations with them. I know that, the kids that really want to be there, that are excited to be there, and they actually really want to improve, are the most fun because they really kind of take on the challenge themselves, rather than having been told exactly what to do step by step, right? And I think that open-endedness helps those students, gain that confidence that they need, to keep on creating or to resolve something that is not resolvable, at least at that point,
Well, and what about when it comes to helping them find a value in self-expression versus technique?
We start out in Painting 1. I'm just thinking about my Painting 1 class right now, but we start out with very technical color wheel, intensity scale, the things they need to know, and also they can get right very easily. So then they feel good about mixing paint. There's, we have some strategies in place, but then we do an abstract painting where they can also hopefully feel successful because it doesn't have to look like anything. They are right now choosing a color palette and mark making approach to express a formative memory from their lives. And so it's a lot of students are having a hard time with the abstract thinking, like how do I turn a memory into a brush stroke? And so that's kind of, it's a different way of thinking. But there's also no right or wrong answer. And most kids really like that. There are some kids who struggle with there not being an objective way to paint abstractly.
Or something that's representational, right? They struggle with dealing with abstract issues just in general. But it's difficult to think abstractly. It's so difficult, right? And kind of thinking about, as an educator, how we kind of do that in the classroom. And I'm working kind of in a similar vein because my Painting 1 students are working on a color and mood painting, right? And
color-filled mood painting. We're always doing the same thing.
Yeah, whether we know it or not, we find out we're doing the same thing.
Sometimes we're able to, and then sometimes we're just randomly doing the same thing.
Yeah, and so they're working on abstraction and expressionism, and abstract expressionism together. And some of them are really kind of rolling with it, and they're having fun with it. And then, you have a couple of students where they're like, is this abstract? Is this abstract? Mm-hmm. Keep going just a little bit more, They're
overthinking it.
They're overthinking it because that's how they kind of work, or that's what they're used to, I
always say, hold on, you'll like the still life unit. We'll get to representation.
But I think to go back to the idea of self-expression and technique, I think both they both work hand in hand. I think they're important for these types of art courses where, they need to know A, B, and C in order to get to X, Y, and Z, it makes sense, right? Totally. And it helps if it's a beginning painting course, like by the time they get to AP, they have that expertise and technique, but they also have that kind of open-endedness of being self-expressionistic, right? And kind of being able to kind of power through those things and understand, like, oh, this is what's possible.
Thank you for sharing that with us. So today I'm chatting with Whitney Bell of Springdale High School and Milan Jilka of Har-Ber High School, who are sharing a little bit about their work as both artists and educators. How do you hope the work with students that you're doing and the things that they're creating kind of influence their lives outside of the classroom?
That's a good question. For the rest of their lives, they will have to critically think, and they will have to be creative, and they will advance in whatever field they go into if they are able to think outside the box. So I like to think that they can have an art making practice on the side no matter what they do. But even if they don't, they might use some of those skills of abstract thinking and creative problem solving in any, I really think art is the most important class, obviously, but they'll use it wherever they go, hopefully.
I think it just opens up what reality is for adults, just in general. Like, we live in a world where there are all these wonderful creative things and people and experiences that are happening, and to kind of open up that world for them in high school is a great thing. It prepares them a lot for the reality of the world, which isn't all just about, going to a class or learning this kind of rudimentary stuff, It's kind of like this all-encompassing thing that's all around us, And so in my thinking, it's more about appreciating, even if you don't become an artist, right? Which a lot of our students will not become, practicing artists, but they'll at least have an appreciation or experiences that kind of mirror that appreciation for art, that can kind of prepare them when they get out into adulthood. Yeah.
And they can hopefully always go to Crystal Bridges or any art museum and be able to talk about art, relate to art.
My goal is that, like, my drawing one students, for instance, we're working on contour and blind contour drawing. So my goal for them is to go home and show their parents or their sibling or whatever, this is what they're doing. And it is kind of weird and it doesn't make sense, but you'll get it after, I teach you how to do it. So that's my goal. I just want them to kind of go out there and have fun with it. So
for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, has there ever been a time where a student has impacted you or inspired you as an artist?
All the time.
How so?
Every year. Let me think specific. I am blown away by some of the observational skills of some of my students. Just, and that is not coming from me, sometimes maybe a previous art teacher, or a lot of times just some kids are able to see something and draw it as it is very well. And some kids have a harder time with that. That doesn't mean they can't make good art. And I talk about that really early, but the technical, like, observational skills of some realistic artists that I encounter, I'm completely blown away with. And I tell them, I can help you with my words. I cannot show you how to do that any better. Like, you are more gifted in that area than me. So I think it's important for them to hear that too, because being an art teacher does not mean I'm the best artist in the room. I may have been painting for a lot longer, but it's a practice, and I can share my thoughts, but sometimes your skill may be more impressive.
What about you, Milan? Have you ever been inspired or impacted by something the students created, or perhaps their growth?
I think I'm like Whitney. I'm surprised by some of them, what level they're at, because I think back at my high school experience, and I thought I was pretty good in high school, but I look at some of these kids and they're brilliant, really, really brilliant. But I had a student the last 3 years. She graduated and is at the School of Art now, Allie, and she just from day one in the 10th grade just blew me away, with how she thought about things, the depth to which she thought through things and through her art, and what she ended up creating. She kind of set things up more for herself than I could ever, and I was literally just her facilitator, rather than a pure, art teacher for her. But that kind of stuff, it's kind of validating to a certain extent, right? Like what we do as our own practice, and it makes me excited to go home and paint,
Well, and you were talking earlier about projects where the students are taking formative moments and trying to translate them on the canvas. How do you do that? How do you help them confront or translate real-world experiences and things that are happening around them into art in a way that is formative and healthy?
We journal a lot, writing first, discussing, talking, but also I think it's very important for them to always have a personal edge to whatever work they're working with. They'll be more interested in it, and the art will be stronger if it's coming from personal experiences and interests. And it's an easier thing to do with art than maybe other subjects, but with still life, they can even make that personal in terms of color choices and maybe how they set up objects, which objects they choose. There's always a way to personalize their artwork, and it will make it stronger.
And I think there's more of a buy-in for those students that have the option of using their own experiences, because kids do want to say stuff. They do have their own experiences, and they have a lot to say, They
have a lot to say.
Yeah.
Are there any challenges for the both of you as far as balancing being an artist and being an educator?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Time.
Time.
I've said that I wish there were more hours in the day, maybe a lot this week. It's hard to do both every day.
I think the beginning of the year is really tough. It's really tough because there's so many procedures and procedural things, and just so many things you're accountable for, and meeting new people, new staff, all that kind of stuff that kind of goes into it. At the end of the day, I just want to go home and sleep because I'm so tired, But I think that eventually, like throughout the year, probably Whitney can say this too, that, you kind of weed out that time to work. And I think I found a pretty good balance, and having time to focus on what I'm going to be teaching, and then focusing on what I'm going to be painting later on, and then having my kids, juggling those guys around and that sort of thing. So
what advice would you guys give emerging artist educators?
Learn how to really see your students as humans and relate to them, because before they have that trust, there's not much, the art room especially, I think every classroom, but especially the art room, it's such a vulnerable place, and having relationships is super important. I learn my students' names like super fast. I'm very proud of that. Like, before I know their names, why would they listen to me? So just having like conversations that are casual with them, about their outfits or their shoes or their music, and just getting to know them, because the safer they feel in there, the more willing they will be to express themselves. Because it is scary to make art, especially if you don't feel confident. And I would say I have some students who do feel confident, but a lot who don't yet. So we have to build that trust.
Yeah, sure.
And as far as just, anyone that's coming into this journey of being an artist educator, I think just being adaptable and being kind of open to kind of change and refine and just get better. I think we've been kind of like, we're in a great position because we both have other art colleagues. Well, many times there's school situations, K through 12, where there's only one art teacher, and they don't have anyone to talk to and anyone to communicate with and anyone to kind of, dialogue with about what they're doing. So we're kind of in a great situation.
We're lucky.
Each of our schools has quite a few art colleagues that we can kind of get together with and figure it out. But I think as, a person kind of coming into this world of art making and art teaching, I think it could be really overwhelming at first. And I think just kind of staying with the course and, trying to be creative and really kind of, getting to know your students was a wonderful thing.
And where could we view your guys' work? If listeners wanted to check it out themselves, where would they go?
I have a website.
Okay.
milanjilka.com. And I have a piece up at a gallery called Midnight Gallery. And like Whitney, I have pieces up at Mixed Gallery, or I guess they're not up. They're there. I guess they exist there.
Yeah, they're in their back room.
Yeah, and
we're both artists at Mixed Gallery in Rogers.
Yeah. And then I don't know if you applied for this, but
did.
Okay, we both applied for the
Walton Arts Center
regional show.
Yes.
Yeah, they're fifth, I'm gonna say.
Not sure.
I think fifth. Yeah.
Something like that.
So we're gonna hopefully find out soon.
We haven't found out. I haven't found out.
Fingers
either,
crossed.
so,
Yeah.
Hopefully.
You'll have to let us know. And then when would that show be? Do you know?
I think it's in the spring or in
No, it's
winter?
actually in the
November.
It'll probably run. I want to say September
So we should find out
until
soon.
December.
Okay.
Perhaps, but it's in the new space right across from, or should be in the new space right across from Theater Squared, next to Grubbs.
Okay, fantastic. I hope you'll circle back and you'll let us know what happens with that, so we can come and check out everything that you guys
Hopefully
are doing.
it's good news.
Hopefully we both get in. It'd be really awkward if only one of us gets in. Oh, and my website is not fully finished, but it's whitneybellart.com, or my Instagram is WAJBart. Is where all my stuff is.
Instagram too. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Well, check them out. Is there anything that you guys want to mention? We talked about so many great things, and I really appreciate everything you guys brought to the conversation. Is there anything that you thought you'd want to share that maybe I hadn't considered?
I don't know.
You asked a lot of great questions.
Well, good. Thank you. Well, and I really appreciate you guys being here in the conversation. It was really great. I know our listeners are going to enjoy it as well.
Thanks, Mary.
You can catch this and previous episodes of Springdale Today on YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram, and listen to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. Thank you for joining us for this conversation. We look forward to chatting with you next time on Springdale Today.
Springdale Today is a production of the Springdale Public Schools Communications Office.
The podcast is hosted by Mary Jordan and is produced and edited by Micah DeLacy.
Be sure to subscribe to Springdale Today for free on your favorite podcast platform.
And don't forget to follow Springdale Today on social media for episode updates
and behind-the-scenes conversations.
Thank you for listening. We hope you will join us in the future as we continue to learn about the amazing stories happening in Springdale today.